We have a quorum. I call the meeting of the panel on education to order. Information paper issued since the last meeting. We have not received any. Dr. Tik-Chi Yun wrote to the panel. He wanted to talk about the arrangements of publicly funded school suspension. I received your letter. Are you going to speak for a minute? Just 1 minute, please. Please press the button. Because we've received complaints from parents saying that some schools have been suspended. And they think that the arrangement could be better. I think that there will be more schools that are going to be suspended. I would like to know about the government measures and how they monitor the schools in the communication with their parents. And some schools changed their mode of teaching. I'd just like to know more about the relevant policies. Thank you. This panel concerns very much about this topic as well. I will talk to the Education Bureau to see if we can discuss this topic in the panel. If there's no comment on this, let me talk about the date and items for discussion of the next meeting. That is set out in CB bracket 3790/2024 bracket 01. The next regular meeting will be held on the 6th of December 2024. That's a Friday. The administration proposes to discuss 1. Promotion of national education and national security education. The administration would like to focus on discussing the relevant progress in kindergartens, primary schools, and secondary schools. Any comment? We have a lot of members who are working in the university. Maybe we can discuss the promotion of national education and national security education in university as well. The second item, public sector school works project. The administration will brief members on the works project of public sector schools in the Northern Metropolis. They will have to seek funding support from the administration to pay for the works project. 3374 EP, that is a 30 classroom primary school at Area 29 Kwu Tung North New Development Area. This is to relocate or reprovision the HHCKLA Buddhist Chansiu Wan Primary School. The second project is 3373 EP, that is that is a 30 classroom primary school at Area 29 Kwu Tung North NDA. This is to reprovision PLPB Pui Ling School of the Precious Blood in Fanlin. The Education Bureau proposed these two items. Any other comment regarding the items of discussion? You can make suggestions after the meeting to the panel. If there's no comment, let's move on to the agenda proper today. Let's invite the Secretary for Education to come in first.
Hi.
Welcome, Secretary for Education. The Secretary for Education will brief us on the Chief Executive's 2024 policy address. The relevant paper is CB bracket 3790/2024 bracket 02. That's the Chief Executive's 2024 policy address, Education Bureau's policy initiatives. Members may press the button to speak now. Let me first ask the Secretary for Education to speak. Members, if you'd like to speak, please press the button as soon as possible. Secretary for Education, Dr. Choi, please. Madam Chair, education is the foundation of national development in the long run. Education is the key to nurturing talents who serve as the foundation for building a strong nation. We will give full play to the unique advantages of Hong Kong's highly international and diversified education system under one country, two system to develop Hong Kong into an international hub for high-caliber talents, create new impetus for high-quality development of Hong Kong's economy, and contribute to the development of a leading country in education. The 2024 policy address continues to adopt the direction of invigorating China through science and education and developing a strong workforce for the modernization drive. By developing an international post-secondary hub for high-caliber talents, a committee on education, technology, and talents chaired by the Chief Secretary for Administration will be set up. It will play a high-level steering and coordinating role with leadership and coordination from the top level to enhance the systemic, holistic, and synergistic nature of policies so as to better promote the integrated development of education, technology, and talents. It will focus on three major strategies, including enhancing various talent schemes and services, establishing an international hub for post-secondary education, and attracting talents in innovation and technology for synergy, thereby building an international hub for high-caliber talents. Writing on the goal of and measures on developing an international hub for post-secondary education, the Education Bureau will endeavor to build the Study in Hong Kong brand to attract outstanding students from all around the world and support international post-secondary institutions collaboration. New measures include hosting international education conferences and exhibitions in Hong Kong to bring together leaders and representatives of the higher education sector from around the world and to enhance post-secondary institutions collaboration and exchanges with institutions from around the world, underlining Hong Kong's status as an international hub for post-secondary education, driving cooperation across institutions in promoting study in Hong Kong brand on a global scale to attract more non-local students. We will remove policy barriers to encourage the market to convert hotels and other commercial buildings into student hostels on a self-financing and privately funded basis. The Education Bureau and the Development Bureau will launch a pilot scheme in the first half of 2025. The government has earmarked over 80 hectares of land in the Northern Metropolis for Northern Metropolis University Town and will encourage local post-secondary institutions to introduce more branded programs, research collaboration, and exchange projects with renowned mainland and overseas institutions in a flexible and innovative manner. We plan to publish the Northern Metropolis University Town Development Conceptual Framework in the first half of 2026. We will launch the Hong Kong Future Talent Scholarship Scheme for Advanced Studies, starting from the 2025-26 academic year, offering scholarships each year up to 1,200 meritorious local students enrolling in designated postgraduate programs that dovetail with our positioning as the ACE centers, especially those on STEAM, digital transformation and innovation, finance and trade, East meets West culture, as well as other key areas such as law and intellectual property trading, to nurture high-caliber talents for the future development of Hong Kong. Details will be announced soon. We'll also step up promotion of the Belt and Road Scholarship to attract more students and develop Hong Kong into an international hub for high-caliber talents. We'll support post-secondary institutions to enhance their support measures and make reference to the best practices to promote cultural diversity on campus to facilitate student integration. The while the government actively supports Hong Kong's post-secondary institutions to foster more research collaboration with other sectors, to this end, the government will provide $1.5 billion of matching grants through a new round of research matching grant scheme within its 4 years period to continuously support Hong Kong's post-secondary education sector in expanding research funding sources, encourage more organizations to support the research endeavors of our institutions. On the other hand, the government will continue to support the parallel development of the self-financing and publicly funded post-secondary education sectors. To further promote the quality development of self-financing institutions, we will introduce a bill to amend the Post-Secondary Colleges Ordinance, Chapter 320, into the Legislative Council for scrutiny within 2025 and promulgate the updated institutional review manual with a view to improving the regulatory and quality assurance mechanisms of self-financing post-secondary institutions. The government has all along been promoting the vocational and sixth professional education and training pathway parallel to conventional academic education. We'll continue to adopt a strategy of fostering institution-industry collaboration and diversified developments in strengthening and enhancing the FEPED articulation pathway. We will promote the development of University of Applied Sciences, UAS, and I'm glad to announce that St. Francis University has been confirmed by the Hong Kong Council for Accreditation of Academic and Vocational to have fulfilled all the requirements for becoming an UAS. It will become the second UAS in Hong Kong. Furthermore, in order to support the joint promotion efforts by UAS, institutions aspiring to become UAS and also the industries, we pursue the establishment of an alliance of UAS and have allocated $100 million as a startup fund for the alliance, supporting the joint promotion by the relevant institutions, industries, and stakeholders. The alliance will be officially established and commence operation in November 2024. That is this month. In order to expand our vocational talent pool at different levels, the government will support the Vocational Training Council, VTC, in developing and enhancing its campuses and VPET facilities, including building a campus for newly established Hong Kong Institute of Information Technology and developing the Lift and Escalator Technology Center so as to respond to society's demand for talents. In terms of basic education, we will continue to support innovative teaching, STEAM education in primary and secondary school, as well as information technology in education to nurture more INT talents. New measures include the setting up of the Steering Committee on Strategic Development of Digital Education, renewing the junior secondary science curriculum to enhance students' scientific thinking and fostering innovation, launching a pilot scheme to promote AI-assisted teaching in junior secondary science by offering a one-off subsidy of $100,000 to participating schools. We will host an international summit and a workshop series for teachers in this school year on the use of AI in the learning and teaching of languages and other subjects. Strengthen the professional development programs and on-site support services for IT and education. To fully harness our advantage of enjoying strong support of the motherland and being closely connected to the world, we attach great importance to nurturing talents and students to become biliterate and trilingual talents with masteries of English and Putonghua. We have reserved approximately $400 million from the Language Fund for dispersing a one-off grant to each publicly funded primary and secondary school in the 2024-25 school year to enrich the English and Putonghua learning environment. Meanwhile, the Bureau will implement a pilot scheme in the 2024-25 school year to encourage schools to apply for additional resources to provide opportunities for junior secondary school students to learn other languages and enrich their learning experiences. To strengthen the sense of national pride and cultivate in students a sense of belonging to our country, we will update the curriculum framework of national security education, provide quality teaching and learning materials for schools, offer professional training for Chinese history teachers, enhance national geography education, incorporate more visiting spots with red resources into the mainland exchange programs and study tours, promote cross-sectoral collaborative activities under the theme of Love Our Homes, Treasure Our Country, to foster patriotism of students. To support students' mental health, we will promote the 4Rs Mental Health Charter in schools and launch the mental health literacy resource packages for senior secondary and lower primary levels. We will also provide thematic training sessions to strengthen teachers' capacity in early identification and support for students with mental health needs. We will organize more thematic parent education programs to assist them to acquire the knowledge and skills in supporting the healthy growth of their children and taking care of their mental health and promote positive parental education. Furthermore, the three-tier school-based emergency mechanism will be extended to end December 2025. Enhanced measures will also be implemented with a view to strengthening the collaboration among the school's multidisciplinary team, off-campus supporting network, and medical services for early identification and support of students with high risk. In addition, the Bureau will include physical education in the internal assessment with effect from the 2026-27 school year to promote whole person development, balanced learning, and healthy growth of students. A 12 series of support measures, including organizing briefing sessions for schools and parents, offering regular professional training for teachers, will be provided. The key to quality education lies with the teachers. The government endeavors to support the development of the teaching professional and teaching profession and strengthen the cultivation of teachers' morality and ethics through a variety of professional development programs and activities. We will allocate $2 billion to set up the Teacher Professional Development Fund for the long-term development of the teaching profession so as to continuously enhance and launch teacher training and exchange programs. We'll implement the Navigators for Excellence in Education training program, the next program, on a pilot basis to nurture potential leading teachers and principals collaboratively by feathering mainland and local experts so as to identify education leaders, and establish the iJourney Scholarship to encourage teachers to participate in overseas exchanges and training activities. Regarding the Teacher Professional Development Fund, we hope to garner the support of the panel on education so that we can seek funding approval from the Finance Committee for $2 billion to set up the fund. Cultivating values and nurturing people is the core mission of education, and nurturing a new generation with love for the country and the city as well as good physical and mental health is our goal. We're working vigorously towards the goal of creating multiple pathways for our students to provide strong impetus for Hong Kong's goal, leveraging Hong Kong's roles as an international education hub to contribute to the building of a leading country in the education. Education as an important and arduous mission requires the professional and conscientious teaching force with a strong sense of mission and responsibility. We will make concerted efforts to implement various initiatives in the 2024 policy address, thereby strengthening high-quality development of education in Hong Kong. That's all from my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christine Choi, Secretary for Education, for her introductory remarks. We have 17 members waiting to speak. So for housekeeping, for the first round, I will give each member 4 minutes. And if the time limit is well observed, there will be time for a second round. We have 1 item for the discussion today. So members, do keep this in mind. If your question has been asked by another member, you don't need to repeat it. You can move on to something else so that we have time for more questions. Let me read out the names of members in this sequence: Mr. Stanley Ng, Michael Tien, Tang Fei, Chow Man Kong, Ambrose Lam, Len Chun Sing, Edward Leung, Teck Chi Yun, Benson Look, William Wong, Rock Chen, Ronick Chen, James Lau, Priscilla Leung, myself, Chu Kwok Keung, Kenneth Leung, Lillian Kwok. All right, who else would like to ask questions? Please press the button as quickly as possible. So these are the members for the first round. Another point I'd like to make is this. Secretary for Education Dr. Choi just referred to 2 funding applications. After discussion at this panel today, the items we submitted to the Finance Committee. That means we won't have a separate item to discuss these 2 funding proposals. So if you have questions in relation to the two proposals. One is paragraph 6, research grant matching scheme. In the next 4 years, $1.5 billion of allocation will be set aside for this scheme. The next proposal is in paragraph 14 of her speaking notes, and that's $2 billion Teacher Professional Development Fund. So that's in paragraph 8 and paragraph 35 of the paper submitted by the administration. Please note that after today's discussion, unless there is any objection, we're going to support the administration's submission of this item to the Finance Committee. Let's begin now with Mr. Stanley Ng. But before he begins, the clerk just reminded me that there is also another legislative amendment proposal that is to amend CAP 320. You will find that in paragraph 10 of the administration's paper or paragraph 7 of the secretary's speaking notes. The post-secondary colleges ordinance has been an issue close to the heart of this panel for many years, and on numerous occasions, members made suggestions to amend this piece of legislation. So we do have a very rich agenda today. That's all from me. Is it a point of order? You mentioned 2 funding proposals to be discussed today. Now, in the past, we would spend an hour on a single funding item. Do we have sufficient time? Let's say if we give our support for the items to be submitted in the Finance Committee, will there be further discussion? Because occasionally we will decide not to have a separate discussion on this item at the FC. Right, if you think these items should be discussed at a separate meeting, then you should make a joint application with other members to the Finance Committee. Mr. Ronald Chan, would you like to respond to this point since he's chair of the Finance Committee? For funding proposals discussed at the level of panel meetings, I think we can tap collective wisdom as to whether we have a separate discussion item. But more importantly, towards the end of the meeting, you should ask whether members agree for these 2 funding proposals to be submitted to the Finance Committee. It's not just a platform for expression of opinion. You need to make a decision. The panel should make a decision on whether the matter should be discussed at the FC. Dr. Teck Chee-yun. As the established procedure, say at the Public Works Subcommittee, after we've discussed an item, members of the PWSC may decide not to have further discussion of the same item at the FC. I want to make sure whether we have the right to make this decision at the panel. I'll let Mr. Ronald Chan explain this point. Well, education doesn't fall under the PWSC or the ESC. So these funding proposals can be submitted directly to the FC. The panel can vote on whether the items are to be submitted to the FC, but it's not for the panel to decide whether the item should be further discussed at the FC. In theory, these items should be discussed at the FC. Mr. Michael Tian. As I understand, instead of 2 items, we have 3 items that we should discuss. So if you decide to lump everything at this single meeting, then I don't think you need to ask members whether we should discuss these items separately. These items must be discussed because at the Public Works Subcommittee, members are allowed to express their views in numerous rounds. This is followed by a voting decision as to whether the item is to be further discussed at the FC. So at today's meeting, we have only one round to express our views. Either you find another slot for us to discuss these items, or we just decide for these items to be discussed at the FC. There's no need to indicate whether we support that or not at the panel meeting. That's exactly why I'm reminding members that this is a funding proposal. I mean, that involves two funding applications. So how about we kickstart the discussion, and if it touches on a funding application, I'm going to ask if members agree. Anyway, this is the step that we must go through before the item is submitted to the FC. So towards the end of the meeting, I will put this question to members, because we came across items to be discussed at the FC before. The administration would like to push it through within the time frame. So that's the reminder I'm giving you. You're free to give your views at today's meeting. And then at the Finance Committee meeting, we can have a further discussion. The role of this panel is to hear from the administration and express our views. Right, let's not have a further discussion on the same point. Your point is noted. I'm not a member. Do I have the right to vote? If I'm not a member, then if you're not a member, then you cannot vote. Now, I think the matter should be discussed at the FC, but I'm not a member of this panel. I don't have the right to vote, and there isn't enough time. Isn't there a problem with the procedures? Well, that's your problem. You need to join the panel of education as a member in order to have the right to vote. Right, I've already made a ruling as chair. You are not a member of this panel. You've been a member for so many years. You must know your rights. We start the discussion now, Mr. Stanley Ng. Thank you. I thank the Secretary for Education for reporting to us the education initiatives in the policy address. I have a number of questions. On AI assistant teaching, I'd like the Secretary to explain this to me. We know that this is the trend, and it is necessary that we make more commitment in this regard. But it's unclear when this will be implemented. Do you have a timetable? Is there anything specific you can tell us? The second point. Secretary also refers to red resources in promoting patriotic education. We've had movements staged by labor unions for more than a century, and this is exactly what the history of Hong Kong is about. The movements constitute red resources in terms of literature, artifacts. We don't have a lot of materials to tell us about these movements. So my question is whether the administration will ramp up its effort in developing the red resources. As mentioned by the Chief Executive in the policy address, we need to make an effort to consolidate historical information, especially those with red resources and those relating to labor union movements, for exhibitions and for the development of red tourism. So that means we need to do more in order to introduce the red resources to the general public. Secretary, to answer the first question on AI-assisted teaching, we strive to keep abreast with the times. So I'd say this is a continuous process. In this year's policy address, a number of important initiatives have been introduced. For example, the Steering Committee on the Strategic Development of Digital Education will be set up. It will provide steer and coordination on the development of digital education. Next, we understand that the development of artificial intelligence is making leaps and bounds, and we'd like to encourage schools to make use of AI to enhance teaching and learning. So a pilot scheme will be introduced for AI assistant teaching to be adopted for junior secondary science. So for participating schools, they will be eligible for a $100,000 grant for, say, developing teaching and learning resources, teaching resources that will add on to the existing resources. On developing red resources, basically, we would like to enhance the public's knowledge on our country. So in fact, we just organized a tour to Jiangxi. We visited the first river crossing of the Long March of the Communist Party of China, and also we visited the spot along Dongjiang River, which is the major source of our water supply since 1960s. And we also set up a task force on promoting patriotic education. So we are going to make a joint effort with the education sector.
Mr. Michael Tian. Secretary, I have two questions. First, the English language level of our students. In 2019, the policy address also touches on the same topic. It is said that the government will dedicate $470 million to enhance the English language proficiency of our students. But I think that we should enhance the net teacher mechanism. But we don't have a lot of net teachers around the world, so it's quite difficult for us to hire enough such teachers. Second, regarding false educational qualifications, there's media reports saying that there is an entire industry for false qualifications, and some agents said that there's no way that their false qualifications will be discovered. Now, 30 cases have been detected, and it said that potentially there are 80 to 100 cases. In the 2023 policy address, it is said that Hong Kong will become the cradle of talents and international education hub, and that we will build a study in Hong Kong brand. But it seems that we're going the wrong way. The chief executive said last week that the university should step up scrutiny of their admission applications. But I think that the Education Bureau should work on it as well. Will you ask the university to submit a proposal to combat the issues, and after that come back to the LegCo to brief us on that? Maybe we should mandate interviews for potential students. There are also agents who place advertisements on social media to promote their service. Will you work with the industry to combat such behavior and activities on the market? Thank you. Secretary, regarding your first question on the promotion of the language proficiency of our students to make them biliterate and trilingual, we have regularized some of our schemes. The SCOLAR, the Scholar, has a scheme, and we will dedicate $200 million to promote the English learning environment. Each school will get a $200,000. Through the Quality Education Fund, we also have some $67 million for school. That's a seed fund. We want to have a regular kind of funding for schools to ensure the competitiveness of our students in terms of language ability. And in terms of EnglishNet teacher, we spent about $1 billion on primary and secondary schools. Now, for the qualifications and English proficiency of our English teachers, we will review them and we will try to make the schemes more flexible. Now, in terms of false qualifications, departments of the government as well as the universities work together. The law enforcement agencies and security bureaus are also involved. The universities contact the law enforcement agencies as soon as they uncover such cases of false education qualifications. The use of false qualifications and instruments is illegal. The maximum penalty of 14 years imprisonment. We strongly suggest our universities to identify a third-party organization to certify the education qualifications. And when the universities look at the certificates submitted by the students, maybe the universities should ask the relevant universities to verify the qualifications of the students. We do not allow such activities to exist that hamper our reputation. Next, Mr. Tan Fei. I have 3 simple questions. In the policy address, it is said that a working group that is a cross-departmental working group will be set up to turn Hong Kong into a hub for high-caliber talents. I remember that the Chief Secretary for Administration asked how we define high-caliber talents. Because, we have top talents, quality talents, and we have high expectations of them. If we are to introduce high-caliber talents, should they be ones that have potential to win the Nobel Prize? Can you let us know what the definition of high-caliber talent is? Our central government has high expectations of Hong Kong, and we are a super connector of the East and the West. After the COVID, the connection between overseas schools and local higher institutions have strengthened. I think that we should continue to foster our ties with overseas institutions. So my question is, how do we make sure that our local primary, secondary, and higher institutions maintain a healthy liaison with overseas institutions by organizing exchanges? And how do we make sure that in the course of exchanges and collaborations, no national security risks would arise? Do you have any guidelines for universities? Self-financing institutions are concerned about the CAP 320. The administration said that they proposed to submit the bill within this year. A lot of self-financing institutions WhatsApp me asking about the ordinance. Will we discuss Chapter 320 separately in the panel? Secretary. Thank you. Regarding the first question on high caliber talents, well, there are talents in INT, education, and other sectors. From the perspective of education, we look for top-notch INT talents and scientists. There is a set of standard in the industry. Now, in terms of sports talent, there is relevant standards in the industry as well. Well, regarding liaison with overseas institutions after COVID, in the 8 UGC-funded universities, there are some 2,600 collaborations with overseas universities. Mr. Tan also asked about the risk of national security. We see that since the enactment of the National Security or Safeguarding National Security Ordinance, under Article 10, it is said that the university should carry out their duty to safeguard national securities. I see that such awareness has been heightened among our teachers. Now, in terms of UGC, they have put in place a requirements on whole person development. So I believe that when the higher institutions organize such activities and exchanges, they will put in place requirements for their teachers and students. After enhancing education on national security, I think that our teachers and students are more aware of such risk. Now, on the amendment of CAP 320, it has been discussed by the panel on education on 2 occasions. Well, because we have decided on the timeline, that's why we're coming to the panel to announce that. I believe that we've discussed the ordinance many times.
就住320章
Yes, this panel previously discussed amendments to CAP 320. We received diverse views from members, so do feel free to express your views on this matter. I know that different post-secondary institutions have also expressed their views on the proposed amendments. So after the meeting, I'll further talk to the Secretary for Education, which we have been doing. We'll see if we need to have another meeting for that. I'll talk to the Secretary. Next, Mr. Chow Man Kong. Thank you. Chair, Secretary, good morning. I thank the Chief Executive and the Education Bureau and your hard work for developing Hong Kong into an international education hub. And this is, in fact, the strategy mentioned in the 3rd plenum. That is, we should develop Hong Kong into an international hub for high-caliber talents. I want to ask a question on the pilot scheme. We have 64,000 local students. That's the figure as of last year. I'm going to put a question to the government through the electrical meeting very soon. I understand that the administration already took on board my suggestion, but the pilot scheme only covered commercial buildings and hotel premises. I think you should talk to the Development Bureau because the pilot scheme doesn't cover the conversion of industrial buildings. According to the Secretary for Development, the pilot scheme only covers commercial buildings and hotel rooms, and that the rooms so converted will be limited in supply. I actually asked some experts back then. Some 26 to 30 industrial buildings were converted into hotels and they situated in industrial zones as well. So why was it possible but not now? I understand for local students the number will go up quite substantially soon. So we need to increase the supply of student hostels. You need to enhance coordination among government departments. Another point is on CAP 320 legislative amendments. At the CE's Q&A session last time, I relayed the views of the institutions or the colleges that the government's regulations are too stringent. I agree that a review should be conducted. Before 2019, a report was released in relation to the regulation of self-finance or review of the self-finance education institutions. Now, the chair of this group actually made some controversial remarks recently. That has sparked a discussion in the community. And I've also prepared this table. Its comparison between the 2022 version and the 2024 version of the ordinance. You've proposed 5 amendments. I see that you've incorporated our suggestions. Anyway, I don't think I can finish my point in 4 minutes. So I think I will raise this point with you again on another occasion to further my point. I just want to know the supporting measures for the post-secondary institutions. It's been 20 years since the mutual recognition of qualifications were introduced, but it seems that we're not even on a par with Macau. The other point is about relaxing the proportion to attract more students from mainland Taiwan and Macau. We need to relax the requirements and speed up the procedures. Finally, Chair, I'd like to raise this issue. Last year, the Belt and Road Scholarship was included in the Secretary's speaking notes. That was a funding proposal, and the members at the panel staged support before the item was submitted to the FC, and that's the convention. Now, this funding proposal entails $1.5 billion, but only 5 lines in this paragraph, and also the Teacher Professional Development Fund totaling $2 billion, and yet only 11 lines in this paragraph. Describing the fund. I think more details should be provided. It talks about teacher training overseas, but I don't think it's sufficient to say overseas. Local training and what else? You should give us more details. Does it include the mainland and Macau? Secretary. Dr. Chow's suggestion is for us to enhance coordination and support among government departments. I fully support that. On the pilot scheme on student hostels, riding on the successful experience, we'll take it further in the future. Indeed, student hostels is a very important supporting infrastructure. Now, for the amendments to CAP 320, I thank the member for his comments. We have considered these comments in fine-tuning our proposal. After all, the review happened in 2018, and it's been some time. We also need to keep in view the latest developments. and fine-tune our proposal on this basis. I thank the member for noting the differences in the proposed amendments. For the self-financing sector, we are proceeding with a number of initiatives. For example, mutual recognition of academic qualifications with the mainland authorities, as well as increasing the quota for non-local students. Now, we do have a quota on students from mainland Taiwan and Macau, but not other overseas students. We are working with the 8 UGC-funded universities to mount external publicity to promote this Study in Hong Kong brand. Now, for self-financing sector, quality assurance is crucial. In order to support the long-term development of the sector, it is essential that they have proper recognition and quality assurance. If there are questions on the quality, then it's going to be a lose-lose. In fact, apart from the paragraphs you mentioned relating to the 2 proposals, we do have other details in the annex. For the Teacher Professional Development Fund totaling $2 billion. The money will be spent on study tours in the mainland for pre-service, incumbent, newly joined teachers, aspiring teachers, as well as navigating teachers, future leaders. The training programs for them are supported by the Ministry of Education in the mainland, and we've also set up a base for teachers in self-financing sector. That's in the normal university in the mainland, and we also have the iJourney scheme for teachers to broaden their horizons and for the introduction of new measures. So the $2 billion Teacher Professional Development Fund will provide staunch support for teacher development. We also have COTAP, Committee on Professional Development of Teachers and Principals, which lays down development criteria for teachers and principals, and all these require funding support. I allow the Secretary to respond to all the 3 points because these 3 points are the highlights of this meeting, and I reminded members in the beginning of this meeting. We're talking about a basket of initiatives that are intertwined. I'm not sure whether members have carefully read everything in the paper. You should also refer to the annex of the paper. Now, about the mainland study tours, this may not be directly relevant to this panel. Still, members should strive to read all the information available. I've given the Secretary an opportunity to respond to all these points. The administration would like to roll out these new initiatives as quickly as possible. Still, if members believe a further discussion is necessary, I keep all options open. Members, please read the paper carefully. Last year, perhaps you didn't pay attention to the scholarship scheme. Now, I do keep all options open. I'd like the Secretary to listen to members' views and suggestions on the 2 funding proposals as well. Next, Mr. Ambrose Lam. 1 comment and 1 question for the Secretary. Building an international hub for high-caliber talents in Hong Kong and promoting the Study in Hong Kong brand, all these are good ideas. However, many students are in their teens and they are so talented that they get admitted to universities. I have friends who have children belonging to this category. However, according to the laws of Hong Kong, a guardian is needed, and these overseas talents will not be able to come to Hong Kong, and that is why the government should expeditiously amend the Parent Responsibility Bill so that parents can appoint guardians to look after the day-to-day affairs of the minors. Next point. According to the paper, the summer bridging program for non-Chinese speaking students will be expanded. But I want to know whether the Chinese lessons will include Putonghua as well, as it is the Education Bureau's policy to promote biliteracy and trilingualism. I just want to know whether this applies to NCS students as well. Secretary. To answer your first point, your view is noted. I relay your views to the relevant bureaus. Biliteracy and trilingualism is the policy for all, including NCS students. So we provide learning opportunities for NCS students in relation to English, Cantonese, and Putonghua. Now, for NCS students, they have different starting points. Some of them are locally born and raised, and they have been immersed in this environment of trilingualism. Whereas for other NCS students, they have come to Hong Kong only in their teens, and they are getting their hands on Cantonese at a later stage, and it will be too much a burden for them to learn Putonghua as well. So the key is to adapt the classes to suit their needs. In fact, I've also inspected some Chinese lessons for NCS students after school. And I have observed classes with a mix of local and NCS students learning Putonghua together. So that depends on the language proficiency of individual students. Schools provide appropriate support, including separate tutoring for the NCS students, both in class and after class, to help them build a more solid language foundation. So we need to consider the language proficiency of individual students in working out a language learning plan for them. Mr. Edward Leung, according to the Mr. Lam Chun Sing, according to the paper, there will be a more extensive adoption of AI in teaching and learning. We have some mature technologies such as ChatGPT that can help look at students' writing. According to the administration, a pilot scheme will be introduced for junior secondary science. But why not extend it to language subjects as well? 50 schools will be covered, and $100,000 will be given to each school as additional resources. Subject to the effectiveness of the pilot scheme, I think more resources should be deployed. Another concern is that whenever we get our hands on a new technology, the underprivileged students may not have the equal footing. They may not afford a computer, for example. Is there support? I know that the Education Bureau or even the Community Care Fund provide support to underprivileged students. But in the future, it's not as simple as buying a computer. As we adopt AI more extensively, how do we make sure that grassroots students will benefit from it as well, so that they can make use of this technology both in the classroom and after school when they're in the community living room or in their home, so that they can also leverage on AI? The second question is about the post-secondary education colleges ordinance. I do agree that it should be revamped to enhance the quality of colleges. Some institutions are concerned whether they will become disqualified. Now, the student enrollment figures should be such that it provides a meaningful learning environment for students. For some post-secondary education institutions, many of them haven't been able to enroll half of the quotas available for a long time. So will these institutions be phased out? In your legislative amendment process, will you offer advice to these institutions? Since the government is promoting VPAT as well, will you appeal to these institutions to go down the VPAT route, so as to avoid a wave of closure of the institutions?
其實一
Secretary. Now, in terms of AI assisted teaching, as I mentioned, the school is promoting such an initiative. We are now updating the junior secondary curriculum, and we're going to organize a summit. I see that a lot of schools are using ChatGPT in the library to assist students in looking for schools and help their students in self-learning. When we adopt new technology, we have to make sure that grassroots students are able to leverage on it. That's why the Quality Education Fund has dedicated $2 billion to develop new application software while making sure that all students have the hardware to use it. The Community Care Fund has concluded their Bring Your Own tablet scheme, and now the Quality Education Fund is providing subsidy to schools to purchase tablets and devices for their students free of charge. These devices will be lent to the students until they graduate. Regarding Chapter 320, this is not to ensure that there will be sufficient students only. We want to enhance the overall quality of self-financing institutions. I see that there is boutique programs offered by some institutions. They can set their own targets for their individual programs, but these targets must be met. We have to make sure that the institutions can recover the cost by offering the program. Also, we have to look at the experience of the students. Even for boutique programs, the target of enrollment could be a dozen, but then if it ended up having only a few students, then a meaningful learning environment would not be able to be offered to the students, because higher institutions charge a high tuition, especially for those self-financed ones. So we have to be a gatekeeper in making sure that the programs offered by these institutions are of quality. That's the goal of our amendment. Next, Mr. Edward Leung. Good morning. It is said that a working group on the establishment of a new medical schools will be set up. And I heard that USD, BU, and PolyU are interested in running the third medical schools in Hong Kong. What is the criteria for selection? The Health Bureau said that the medical school should train quality doctors, but only polytechnic universities have programs on optometry, physiotherapy, and so on. How do we make sure that we balance clinical and research ability of the students? Secretary. This The working group that you mentioned comprises two bureaus, that is the Education Bureau and the Health Bureau. The third medical schools is important to the development of Hong Kong and will have to invest substantially. One of the goals of the third medical school is to increase the supply of clinical doctors. Now, in terms of medical innovation and technology, we also have to nurture talents for that. So in terms of enrollment criteria, we ask the incoming students who have already obtained a first degree, and this arrangement complements the two existing medical schools so that there will not be any waste of resources, and we want to also nurture talents in specific areas such as life science and the latest medical technological development. So apart from medical or clinical training, we'll offer training on research and development as well. The medical school should not be a standalone institution. It should complement the development of the entire university organically. So these are the factors that we look into when we select the third medical school's operating body. Next, Dr. Teck Ji-yun. Thank you. I think that the initiatives proposed in the the policy address is great. I have a few comments. Now, in terms of population projection, the Bureau usually plan for the school places based on the birth rate and the population growth. However, we see that a lot of people have moved to other countries, and we also have talents coming here through the Top Talent Pass scheme. O. Sullivan is coming to Hong Kong as well. So I don't think that we should base our education planning on fertility or birth rate, but the people flow and the trend of it. Do you have any figures on that? Second, regarding the suspension and of schools and enrollment of students, you make decisions based on the, for example, primary one enrollment. But there are, for example, talents coming to Hong Kong, and they may bring along their children, and they may be admitted to primary 2 and 3 instead of 1. Do you have any new plan for that? So my first question is about suspension of schools and closure. This is a threat for the entire industry. And this affects the morale of the trade. For some schools, they may try to put pressure on their students to avoid their schools being closed. I am worried about this because closure of school will not reduce the expenditure of the Bureau substantially. I think that we should close less or fewer schools in the future so that schools can adapt better and cater to the needs of SDN students. Also, by this, the school can cater to their bottom students or worst performing students, and so that the schools can implement the three-tier emergency mechanism, as well as to promote national security education. If the morale of the teachers is low and they are worried about their future, these initiatives will not be implemented very well. Will you adopt a new thinking? I think that we should freeze school closures for 3 years. That's my suggestion. Secretary. First, on population projection and our future planning. These are the things that we have been looking into because that does not only affect the long-term sustainable development of our schools, but also teachers' future and the establishment of new schools, as well as resource allocation. When we make our projections, we have regards to the talent flow. We project that from now to 2030, we have 49,000. Well, the number of primary one students will go from 49,000 to 34,000. For secondary school students, it will go from 66,000 to 51,000. Dr. Tick suggests freezing of school closure. If we actually do that, then there will be schools with very few students. We want to plan based on objective factors. The teacher to students ratio is 1 to 11.9 in primary school, 1 to 11.1 in secondary school. That's far lower than the ratio in 2019, that is 1 to 14. The reason why that happens is that we have assigned more teachers to schools to better cater to the needs of the students. We want to spend resources on taking care of our students. Although there is a decline in school-age population, we have more classes. Why is that? Well, because 95% of public sector primary schools implementing small class teaching. We have a lot of school places that are vacant, so talents would not have to worry about their children not getting a place in our schools. So in terms of long-term planning, I think that we have to plan progressively instead of freezing the school closure. If we freeze the school closure and after 3 years close a lot of schools, then that will impact the trade even more. We want to progressively deal with the decline in school-age population. We understand that the schools are faced with pressure with too few students in a single grade, then teachers would be faced with stress. Because teachers have to shoulder administrative duties as well. The scale would affect the division of duties among students, teachers. If schools have too few students, then teachers won't be able to arrange for extracurricular activities or organize a choir within the school. We top priority to the interest of our students. So the scale of a school is very important. For schools with too few students or have difficulties in enrolling students, we talk to them to make sure that the school sponsoring bodies know about the situation and plan for mergers, for example, or closure. This will also allow the schools to inform and notify the parents earlier.
係，多謝。
Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Chair. Secretary. For education initiatives in this year's policy address, we're riding on last year's initiatives to further build Hong Kong into an international education hub and to promote the study in Hong Kong brand so that more students from other places will come and study in Hong Kong. Now, the country also supports the development of Hong Kong into an international hub for high caliber talents. So, to use football as an analogy, we are providing youth squad training. There is an increasing demand in student hostels. So, a pilot scheme will be rolled out to increase the supply of student hostels. I have the following question. The government would like to rely on market forces, but the private market are full of changes. Have you conducted any market sounding with private developers? Do you know the projected supply in the coming years so as to lay down KPIs? My second question is this. I put in the written question to the administration at the council meeting 2 days ago. There are 158,300 local students in Hong Kong and 64,200 non-local students. We only have a supply of 50,000 student hostel units. So my question is whether the government will introduce a long-term supply target for student hostel places. My next question is this. Regarding the pilot scheme to increase supply of student hostels, roughly when will we see the first batch of supply coming on stream? Secretary, first question, any market sounding to gauge the supply from the private sector? Well, it's not something conjured out of thin air. We know that some self-financed institutions are already doing the same, and we have actually drawn on the experience and the challenges facing them in coming up with the pilot scheme. We seek to remove red tape, and it's not something new actually. We don't want prices to be jacked up because of a surge in demand. So it's for the institutions to negotiate with project proponents based on their needs. In 2018, we reviewed the student hostel supply, and $10.3 billion was set aside for the development of student hostels, and by 2027, according to our projection, there should be sufficient supply to meet the demand. However, we've also raised the quota for non-local students, and that accounts for the increase in demand. And that is why we are starting early. We'd like to tap the private market's supply in this regard. Meanwhile, we are also exploring other opportunities to further boost supply, and we look forward to more innovative and creative ways to do so in future. Right, what's the third question? When will the first batch of hostel places come onto stream? We haven't set a timetable. They will be available as long as they are ready. Right, we should be able to allow a second round. Professor William Wong. My first comment is this. I&T development is making leaps and bounds. We need an overhaul of the talent nurturing mechanism in Hong Kong to cope with the demand. Last year, I moved a member's motion. I suggest setting up a steering committee to nurture I&T talents in Hong Kong. So I'm happy to see that in the policy address, the Committee on Education, Technology and Talents will be established. This is a response to the call in the third plenary session, and that is we should enhance coordination to take forward the reform of grooming I&T talents. The education sector and the I&T sector should revamp the education mechanism for grooming I&T talents so that we could groom local talents to meet our needs. My second point is this. In this year's policy address, within this school year, the Steering Committee on the Strategic Development of Digital Education will be set up, and that there will be funding support for trying out AI-assisted teaching. Again, I'm pleased to learn that as well. We should promote digital education in order to promote I&T in Hong Kong. I'd like the Education Bureau to set out the specific details and targets for this initiative. My third point is this. Other members already touched on AI-assisted teaching and learning. Will the government set up a working group to handle matters relating to AI-assisted learning and teaching? Next, the Privacy Commissioner recently published a model framework for the protection of AI development. Will there be guidelines for schools to choose what AI or generative AI models to use to make sure that the AI used will be based on clean data so as to avoid students being affected by disinformation? Secretary, I thank Professor William Wong for agreeing that when it comes to I&T development, we're making leaps and bounds, and it's going at exponential rate. As mentioned, the Chief Secretary for Administration will be chairing a committee on education, technology, and talents, and the Education Bureau also has a steering committee on the strategic development of digital education. So we will set out the development directions after collecting views from different sectors of the community, as well as from experts, to better take forward digital education. The steering committee I mentioned will be looking into AI-assisted teaching and learning as well. So these will be the structure for a start. We don't want to set up too many committees at the outset. We'll be reviewing the effectiveness and consider further options. On media literacy, we have laid down clear guidelines for schools, teachers, students. We have a very clear policy on media literacy, which is subject to regular update and review. Next, Mr. Rock Chan. On behalf of the Hong Kong Council for Academic Accreditation and Vocational Qualifications, I support the administration's proposal to submit legislative amendments to the Legislative Council on CAP 320 to enhance supervision and quality assurance of self-financed higher education institutions, as well as enhancing its governance so as to build a multiple pathway for students and to make Hong Kong an international education hub. Now, the Secretary this morning announced that the St. Francis University has successfully undergone the assessment mechanism of the HKCAAVQ, and that it will officially become a university. So through the Alliance of Universities of Applied Science, we need to promote this. That is, the next step is to change the mindset of parents and students. Anyway, that's my comment. My real question is this. We have 150 quotas every year for students under the Belt and Road Scholarship, but only 100 quotas have been used so far. Is it because of lack of publicity or other reasons? Will there be additional incentives to attract Belt and Road students to come, including other forms of scholarship and accommodation allowances for them to have the motivation to come to Hong Kong to further their studies? Secretary, I thank Mr. Chan for supporting the alliance as well as legislative amendments to CAP 320. As for the Belt and Road Scholarship with a quota of 680, it was first introduced by former Chief Executive C.Y. Leung. Back then, the Legislative Council had diverse views. For the first year, at first, there were only 10 places, and then by leveraging the community, the number of places increased to 30. All of the places were taken up, and then in the subsequent term of government, the quota increased to 100, and starting from 2014-15, we've increased the quota to 150. So that's altogether 600 plus, starting with 10 places a year. And all these 600 plus places have been taken up. It's very popular. The applicants come from 70 Belt and Road countries. So after our selection process, we have picked 680 students coming from some 40 or 50 Belt and Road countries. These candidates are required to sign contracts with us. On areas where we enjoy an advantage, trade, commerce, etc., we've signed agreements and increased quotas for these countries. Mr. Ronald Chan. According to the Secretary, the UAS alliance will be officially set up this year, and the government has set aside $100 million as the startup fund for the alliance. As mentioned in last year's policy address, higher education institutions with potential will receive funding support, and as declared by Secretary this morning, the St. Francis University will officially become another university in Hong Kong. There are also 22 other institutions that offer locally accredited degree awarding courses. For example, under the VTC, there is the Hong Kong Institute of Information Technology. So my question is whether the institutions providing locally accredited award degrees will be able to join the alliance as well. My next question is this. You will foster collaboration and exchange with other countries. There are 206 such institutions in Germany and 34 in the Netherlands and 3 in Singapore. In Hong Kong, we have 2. Will there be exchange and collaboration programs rolled out to promote collaboration with institutions in these places? My next point is that I support amendments to CAP 320, but as mentioned by other members, the government has taken a long time in consulting the Legislative Council. In 2022, the original proposal was that for granting the name for granting approval, the powers will be delegated to the Permanent Secretary for Education. Now, the Secretary for Education will be the authority in question, and that the original proposal was to submit the legislative amendment in 2025. Now it will be postponed to 2027. Why?
你係加入嘅。
Secretary, we will invite various institutions to join the alliance of UAS, not just the 2 UAS in Hong Kong. How will we make use of the startup fund to promote collaboration? Well, the permanent secretary is the chairperson of the steering committee. After the fund is set up in November, we will work with other overseas institutions to arrange visits on top of Switzerland, Germany, Finland, and European Union. We'll look into how we can make reference to the experience of our country as well. The steering committee will look into various initiatives and report to members. As for CAP 320, we've listened to the members' views and we talked to the stakeholders and the trade. As for the power of awarding degree, we've discussed this previously in this Legislative Council. The same comment was made by other members. To show how government attaches importance to such self-financing colleges, that's why the power is now with the secretary instead of the permanent secretary. We work closely with the stakeholders on the amendment of the legislation, and time is needed for the review, and that's why we've come to the panel now. Next, Mr. Lau Chi-pan. Thank you. I support the Chief Executive's policy address, Education Bureau's policy initiatives. I have some questions. First, on the brand of study in Hong Kong. I am concerned about the quotas for non-local students in self-financing institutions. The quotas for non-local students in 8 UGC-funded universities been raised from 20% to 40%. Do you have a percentage for non-UGC-funded institutions in Hong Kong? Second, I'd like to ask about the amendment to CAP 320. I support the proposal because that will enhance the quality of our self-financing higher institutions. But some institutions have become university with large number of students. But for institutions that are smaller in scale, upon amendment of CAP 320, how will the administration assist these institutions in their operation? Third, in 2026-27 school year, in the primary internal assessment, physical education will be included. A lot of parents have concern about this because students go through puberty at different time. Are we going to have a comprehensive assessment mechanism to assess the physical capability of our students? My last point, I fully support the establishment of the Teacher Professional Development Fund. The education sector should keep up with the time with the aid of the Development Fund. I hope that when the proposal is submitted to the Finance Committee, we'll have more details of the fund. 3 questions and 1 expectation. Secretary. Thank you. On the quotas on non-local students in self-financing institutions, as I've said, apart from mainland Macau and Taiwanese students, there is not a quota for enrollment of non-local students among self-financing institutions. Now we've been working with our mainland counterparts on the regulation of CAP 320. We will make sure that by increasing the non-local student quotas, that will enhance the quality of our self-financing institutions. How are we going to support institutions of smaller scale? Under amendments to CAP 320, there are initiatives and measures to support self-financing institutions of various scale. Upon legislative amendment, we will roll out measures to support institutions regardless of their size. We have a startup fund for self-financing institutions, and we also have a subsidy to self-financing programs and land grant programs. These are the measures that self-financing institutions will be able to benefit. We hope that we can amend CAP 320 as soon as possible. Now on internal assessment, I know that the schools have been assessing students of their physical education or physical capability. There are some students that can be exempted from taking physical education subject. I hope that parents would attach more importance to the physical health of their students so that they become more healthy. Well, the $2 billion professional teacher development fund is important. We welcome views from the members as to how we should spend the fund. We can discuss it in the Finance Committee meeting. Thank you. It's my turn. Please refer to CB bracket 3790/24 bracket 02. We should not just look at the green booklet when we discuss the policy address. We should also look at the paper prepared by the Education Bureau. There are a few annexes to the main paper, but I don't see members talking about the content of the annex. First of all, if you're concerned about the topic, you can give your views, and I keep an open mind to discussing the 2 items separately. If you want us to discuss the Teacher Professional Development Fund and the Research Matching Grant separately, then you should state your stance very clearly. If members think that they need more time to read or look into the details of the schemes, then I may allow for a meeting to discuss these 2 items separately. I support the policy address. I've wrote an article on it, especially under paragraph 108. It is said that we should leverage on our advantage to organize international education summit and seminars and promote collaborations with the mainland institutions. I agree that we should work together to contribute, and I lead a local group to promote various initiatives. On the 2nd and 3rd December this year, we have organized a summit to be attended by a lot of university principals from other countries. That's how the community complements the works of the government. It's difficult for community groups and organizations to carry out or organize a summit than the government. So please learn more about such educational or education mega events organized by the community. There are 5 local universities that are ranked top 100 in the world. So I think that we should focus on university. Now on CAP 320, I agree that we should close higher institutions or post-secondary institutions of low quality. We should not delay. We should instead ask the teachers to transform. We should organize marketable programs for students that meet the market demand. I think that also quotas for non-local students should be increased for these post-secondary institutions. For those who are not performing well, we should ask them to transform. Before the meeting, I received a number of calls from post-secondary institutions asking me to talk about this. I also asked the institutions about the power accorded to the secretary instead of the permanent secretary. Well, they said that they support the arrangement. It should be the principal officials who should have the power to close or cancel any registration. We should cancel registration of poor performing post-secondary institutions. Just like for secondary schools, we should help the institutions transform. And we should also tell the students that they don't necessarily have to complete a sub-degree or associate degree. Instead, we should ask them to transform and maybe take VPET programs. Because human behavior and consumption patterns have changed, post-secondary institutions and university have to reform themselves to meet the social changes, such as the emergence of e-commerce. We should organize programs that are marketable, and we should help the post-secondary institutions transform. We've talked about this multiple times. I'd like this to be recorded. I think that I should tell new members this. For CAP 320, well, I think that we should increase the quotas for non-local students. I hope that the secretary will consider it. I need to press the button for the second round. What I said in the opening has everything to do with how our meeting is convened. I think that the members should read the paper. I think that the secretary, you should alert members of what you've put in your paper.
首先我要申報啦，我係小學嘅校長。
Mr. Zhu Kokok, I declare that I'm a principal of a primary school, and I'm also the governor of a non-profit making kindergartens. I really appreciate the new initiative called Teacher Professional Development Fund. The education sector will give its full support. I think the fund should be tailor-made to meet the needs of students as well as teachers. For example, student mental health. We need professional counselors for students on site. This can definitely help drive down student suicide rate. So we need professionals like these in school campuses. If we don't have sufficient supply in the market, we should provide training to teachers to enhance the counseling skills. I think the major drawback of the education policy in Hong Kong is that counselors are not accessible. For publicly funded or those kindergartens covered by the KG scheme, the only grant available is to promote national education. According to school principals, the policy should be fine-tuned because they are under a lot of strain. They cannot hire sufficient teachers. According to the survey conducted by a political party, in our population, 370,000 women could rejoin the workforce, but they are not doing so because of insufficient childcare places. Kindergartens have a role to play. The government has all along refused to increase the number of subsidized places, in particular for whole day and long whole day places. May I know the reason why? Will the government consider deploying more resources to develop kindergarten-cum childcare facilities? Secretary. Mr. Zhu mentioned the Teacher Professional Development Fund and that teacher training should be enhanced to better suit the needs of students as well as teachers. This is also something that we're working towards, and we will continue to ramp up our efforts in safeguarding student mental health. Declining student population is also a trend that we've been keeping in view, and as I explained, this is a structural change, and we need to adopt the long-term strategy of soft landing for schools to avoid a sharp impact on schools because it will harm both schools and parents. $57 million will be set aside to promote parent education, especially to promote Chinese culture. On top of that, the $2 billion Teacher Professional Development Fund covers kindergartens. For whole day and long whole day places in kindergartens, the subsidy amount for half day places is set by the government. And then for whole day places, if the subsidy amount for half day is 1, then for whole day places is 1.3. That means schools or kindergartens will charge the 0.3 portion. If there is a need to adjust the subsidy amount for half-day places, then correspondingly, the 1.3-1.6 ratio will be adjusted. We understand that the expenditure for kindergartens running whole day and long whole day places are more than those only providing half day places, and we are providing them greater funding support. We also remind operators to keep in view the situation. As for kindergarten cum childcare facilities, we need to consider these as two separate matters. That is the survival of kindergartens and kindergarten education. We shouldn't only consider maintaining the operation of kindergartens. What's not supposed to be part of the education service provided by the kindergartens should not be included. We've conducted some detailed studies. It's not as easy as adding some additional services to be provided by kindergartens. We also need to consider the implications for teacher resources, etc. Next, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Last year's policy address puts forward the idea of international education hub, and this year the chief executive goes further by putting forward the Study in Hong Kong brand. I welcome that as well. Apart from attracting young people to come and further their studies in Hong Kong, we need to keep them here. So I support the direction of this policy. Now, there were questions on attracting Belt and Road students to come to Hong Kong. Just now, I'm not going to repeat. As I understand from the paper, more support will be provided to self-finance education institutions to promote integration on campuses. For example, I want to know whether institutions are aware of the needs of Muslim students in terms of catering and other facilities. I'd like to know whether there are measures to cater for the needs. Next, I'm pleased to know that the Steering Committee on the Strategic Development of Digital Education will be set up. How is it different from the Steering Committee on the Strategic Development of INT Education? Will the Steering Committee on Digital Education replace the former? Is there any difference in terms of the terms of reference? I fully agree that we should leverage INT in education, but it's really a pain in the neck whenever I see my son logging into 9 apps in order to access his schoolwork. So I want to make sure that it's convenient for students so that we focus our time and resources on education. Dr. Christine Choi. About the admission of non-local students, the quotas will be increased, and we want to promote integration on school campuses. We've been reminding these institutions to provide more support to non-local students for them to better adapt to our culture and our lifestyle and our environment, which will be helpful in retaining them for further development in the future. The idea is to promote inclusiveness. There is diversity in universities. With the development under the Belt and Road initiatives, we are seeing more and more Muslim students in Hong Kong. Still, we're talking about great diversity with many students from around the world taking up over 100 different courses in Hong Kong. So at the same time, we need to consider the limited resources in universities. What's key is to promote a culture of inclusiveness and diversity to promote learning. Next, for the Steering Committee on the Strategic Development of Digital Education, we have set clear goals, such as the positioning of digital education. We will also be making reference to the policies in other jurisdictions. We will lay down indicators and targets and enhance liaison with professional groups and organizations. Now, the member mentioned the use of various apps. One key consideration is the market. We have 800,000 students in Hong Kong. So the use of apps depends on the school's preferences. In future, we'd like to expand the market so that more INT companies can develop more applications. At present, because of the market size in Hong Kong, we don't have any apps tailor-made for the Hong Kong market, I'm afraid. I'm going to exercise my discretion and extend this meeting by 15 minutes. And then we will see how things go, Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, Chair. I don't think a single panel meeting will cover all the education-related initiatives in this year's policy address, not to mention that we need to save some time for voting on a matter in a moment. Now I'm concerned about the $2 billion Teacher Professional Development Fund. I believe this is an excellent idea. We have been committed to promoting professional development among teachers, but we've been taking a fragmented approach. We have annual provisions, but we don't have a holistic strategy to promote professional development. With a $2 billion fund, we can formulate a longer-term planning. That is a continuous process to enhance teaching and learning and the curriculum frameworks. As mentioned by the Secretary, the administration would like to enhance training for teachers and school principals. For vice school principals and senior teachers aspiring to become school principals, they are required to undertake certain courses. Even for principals seeking an extension, they need to take the course as well. The Education Bureau is in charge of the training course for vice principals, but for school principals seeking extension of their term, they are required to pay for the training fees. We have a lot of teachers at the middle level. Many of them have decided to become part-time teachers, and we are short of teachers with managerial experience. Many teachers would prefer frontline work instead of school management. So they are not aspiring to be promoted. And what's even worse is that they need to fork out money to take these training courses, and there's no guarantee that after you've complete the course you get promoted. So I want to know whether the $2 billion fund will cover training courses to be provided to school principals seeking an extension of term. My next question is this, and it's set out in paragraph 11. So my question is about national education, because I see that there are more and more such modules in the teachers' training calendar. But exactly what are you training our teachers? Can you tell us more about that? The third point is about the fund. You will be engaging fund managers to run this fund. What is the selection criteria? We were discussing the Belt and Road Scholarship last time, and it was revealed that the 5 fund managers all have the background of Western countries. is either the UK or the US. So for this new fund, can you tell us about the selection criteria for fund managers? I'll save my other questions for the second round.
好，咁咧就住
Secretary. Will the $2 billion include the training program for school principals? We see that we have enough teachers who have undergone training for becoming school principals. As Ms. Kwok said, even after undergoing the programs, the teachers may opt not to become a school principal eventually. Principals is important to the operation of a school, and there is a demand for such positions. We review the teacher training situation based on actual circumstances. Second, on national education training for teachers. Now, in terms of national security, constitution, basic law, national geography, and culture, we see that teachers have undergone more training in these areas and they have participated in exchange tours. For incoming teachers and teachers who have just been promoted, they have to go for a study tour in the mainland. I think that this is useful in enhancing the sense of national identity and patriotism among our teachers. Third, on fund management. COTEM will be our trustee or custodian. We'll make investment as appropriate. The fund will be put under our exchange fund under the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. With a fixed income, hopefully we'll be able to support the professional development of our teachers. As for other funds, there are working groups and a committee to oversee the performance of the fund and to make sure that the investment strategy is in line with our national security strategy. Mr. Holden Chow.
Concerns of foreign expatriates, so I would like to address everybody in English. During the pandemic, some foreign expatriates have left Hong Kong and some international schools might downsize their operations. And for now, it proves that the foreigners are not leaving Hong Kong for good. The good news is they plan to come back to Hong Kong. But for the limited seats at the international schools, some foreigners might not be able to arrange their kids to study at international schools like what they used to be. That might deter foreign talents from coming to Hong Kong because they need to make sure their kids' education are in good hands before they decide to move here. The policy address this year stressed our determination to compete for global talents. That is welcoming. And I've spoken to some stakeholders of international schools here, and would the Bureau allow them to have more flexibility in carrying out their own operations? For instance, the way they collect school fees instead of on monthly basis, can they collect every season or on every term? Of course, given that they have received consent from the parents, or the expansion or the way how they use their school campus to create more seats to cater to parents' growing demand. And last but not least, a lot of foreign business stakeholders also appreciate the government's effort in pledging in the policy address this year to boost Hong Kong's English proficiency, and a round of applause to the CE and the government in this regard. Thank you.
OK，局長。
Okay, so I will answer your question in English as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think we keep reviewing the school places for the international schools from time to time, so that recently we have done the survey on the school places for the international schools. We found that it's still adequate, and we have enough school places for those students who want to enter into the international schools. But of course, they may not be returned to the school they are targeted, or the most popular one, because it's highly competitive. You asked about if we can have more flexibility in the campuses use or the school places allocation. I think we can, or we encourage the school to come to us. We can explore and discuss case by case.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, là-
Now we've come to the second round. Well, for those members who have read the paper, they know that there are 3 annexes to our paper. I will not ask members to vote in this meeting. Next week, as I know that the schedule is very tight, maybe I will add another meeting next week for the panel on education so that members can come and give you views before the proposals are submitted to the Finance Committee. I think that some members have not read the 3 annexes, as you may have noticed. The members did not say this directly, but I understand that they want me to organize another meeting next week. We are looking for a meeting room for that. As to how many agenda items we should have, well, I think that we've discussed CAF 320 multiple times. As for funding proposals, because they are to be submitted to the Finance Committee, I will talk to the administration about the arrangement. So next week, we'll have another meeting because it's not feasible for us to extend this meeting any further. 3 members would like to speak for the second round. I hope that I will not have to extend the meeting any further. But would the secretary please stay behind? I may have to extend the meeting further beyond 1 p.m. 2 minutes per member, including question and answer. Mr. Tian is not here, so Dr. Tao Man Kwan. Thank you. I'd like to ask about Hung Shui Kiu Ha Chi New Development Area. There will be 5 hectares reserved for self-financing institutions. It is said that administration has received expression of interests. Now we're approaching the end of 2024. I'd like to ask about the progress. CAP 320. I understand that we have to ask the post-secondary institutions to recruit enough students to make sure that there is a meaningful learning environment. But with the decline of birth rate, we have fewer students. I think that the administration should be very cautious. I will talk to the secretary and the permanent secretary after the meeting due to the time limit because because we've had only 1 meeting on this chapter. Secretary, please. Thank you, Chair. On Hung Shui Kiu Ha Chi NDO, for Northern Metropolis, in 2023, we organized a briefing for our post-secondary institutions, and in August the same year, we have listened to the views of the interested post-secondary institutions. 19 of such institutions have submitted expression of interest. With the latest development of the Northern Metropolis, we will consider various views in a consolidated manner. But only by 2026 will we have a detailed design on the area. So post-secondary institutions will not have received any results from us yet. As for the enrollment of students under CAP 320, as I mentioned, we don't set an absolute number of students that the post-secondary institutions should enroll. These institutions should look at the situation of the decline in school-age population to adjust their own strategy. They should tailor their program according to the numbers of students that they can enroll. I think that I have to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Regarding CAP 320, maybe we don't have to discuss it in the meeting. I know that members have received calls from post-secondary institutions. Maybe we should arrange for an exchange session instead of talking about this in the panel meeting. Let's fix the date so that post-secondary institutions who are interested can meet with you and speak more freely. Okay. Now it's my turn. Now, in terms of international schools, I know that a lot of top talents are not just foreigners, but those who have moved overseas and returned to Hong Kong. A lot of these talents don't really have a deep understanding of our DSE. That's why they have their students enroll in international schools. Elite schools are very competitive. Top talents have asked me to write referral letters for them. Everyone has been asking me about a school with which name is with 2 words. Everyone is asking me to refer their students to a local school that is patriotic. I think that international schools should focus on foreigners, but some top talents want to have their students enroll in schools that can interface with mainland schools. Will IB stream students in Hong Kong be able to be enrolled in mainland universities? The reason why there is such a huge demand for international schools is because we don't promote the DSE enough. Thank you, Chair. That's a comment from me.
頭先淨係
Ms. Lillian Kwok. My last question was on a $2 billion fund. My next question is CAP 320. Is the highlight the admission percentage for non-local students should be relaxed? As I understand, there will be a 2-year transitional period after passage of the bill. What is the assistance available to the 11 institutions to enhance governance? And it's very important because VPET is going to be a very important aspect of education. We want to raise the standards and quality of institutions as well. My next question is this. Now, if it's a government's policy to focus on VPET, there is this question. For a vocational institution, will the government consider setting up a UGC-funded vocational oriented university in Hong Kong? My next point is on student mental health. We've received good news in terms of student suicide rate. That shows the effectiveness of the government's efforts. Counselors are available in schools. I am a counselor and I have the SGT background, but I think we should step up training. The government should conduct a review. The 2-year transition period for CAP 320. This is put in place for the institutions to have time to go through the registration process. We want to step up support for the institutions as well. For the 8 institutions, that's the UGC-funded universities like polytechnic universities. They have the PT/OT programs, and we also have other vocational-oriented courses such as dentistry. These 8 universities have their unique positionings, so we won't call them vocational training. Our system is different from other jurisdictions. In another country, perhaps if a university provides a course on mechanical engineering, it can already be called a vocational university. We take an integrated approach. So in terms of applied sciences, we provide support to the institutions by way of various means, such as student grants and non-means tested loans, so as to keep things flexible and to expedite the supply of manpower. To take the third question on student mental health, on numerous occasions we have noted the Ms. Lin Kwok's comment on counselors. Any other questions from members? Comments? As I explained, I'm not going to put any matter to a vote today. I will talk to the Secretariat. In fact, I've done so, and next week there will be another meeting. As I understand, members have some views on this matter. Some members haven't finished reading the paper, and some members have other points to make. So another meeting will be arranged next week. But do keep in mind the administration's timetable. They have a quite a short time frame, in fact. Is it going to be a discussion on the Teacher Professional Development Fund? It seems to be the members' concerns. As for the research grant matching scheme, I think that this is more familiar to members. It's not a new scheme. Right, we'll talk to the Secretary again. I keep all options open. Do we need to put this to a vote? No, I've decided not to put this to a vote. So we are going to discuss this next time. So we can't queue up for the FC meeting yet for the $500 million scheme, right? We will discuss these two funds or funding proposals at the next meeting. Well, it takes time for the items to be discussed at the Finance Committee. But, you know, Secretary, I don't think members have yet discussed the fund thoroughly because probably they haven't read the paper. So next week we're going to have another meeting to discuss all the funding proposals. I think that members will support this idea as well. Right, meeting's adjourned.